Chapter 1. Unevaluated. The corridor outside the evaluation hall stretched longer than it needed to. It had been designed that way intentionally. Long white panels lined the walls, polished so thoroughly that the overhead lights reflected across the surface like distant stars. The floor plating was smooth composite alloy, slightly warm beneath the boots of the students who walked it. Embedded light strips ran along the edges of the hall, glowing softly in the ark's neutral civic white. There were no decorations. No windows. Just the quiet hum of the ark itself. Artemis Golmir stood halfway down the corridor staring at the massive doorway before him. Above the entrance hung a steel arch with glowing white letters embedded directly into the metal frame. UE Academy. Unevaluated Terran Training. The letters pulsed faintly as if breathing with the ark's power grid. This place marked the beginning of adulthood for every Terran citizen born aboard the arks. 112 great vessels had left Terra centuries ago, each carrying its own civilization among the stars. Generations had lived and died within their rotating cities. Entire societies had grown in the hollow rings of metal and gravity that drifted through the void. Ark 34 was one of them. And here, inside this academy, every child began their path toward becoming something more than just another Terran body aboard a drifting world. Until the age of 16, every child carried the same designation. UE. Unevaluated. No corp. No assignment. No authority. Just potential. Eventually, the Ark would decide what you would become. A farmer in Agriculture Corp. A soldier in Guard Corp. An explorer in Pathfinder. A scientist in Genesis. An engineer. A labor commander. A judge of the directorate. Or something else entirely. But until that day, you were nothing. Artemis tugged at the collar of his academy uniform. The fabric was simple gray, durable synthetic weave meant to survive years of student wear. A thin white stripe ran horizontally across the chest, marking the wearer as unevaluated. No rank markings. No corp colors. No symbols of prestige. Just the blank slate of a Terran citizen waiting for purpose. Students moved quietly around him in small groups. Some laughed nervously. Others whispered excitedly. Many wore expressions of confidence that came from knowing exactly where they belonged. Artemis watched them carefully. The girl with the neatly braided hair and bright eyes laughing with her parents nearby, Agriculture Corp lineage, probably. Generations of hydroponics specialists who kept Ark food systems thriving. The tall boy standing with his back perfectly straight beside a stern-looking woman wearing dark directorate robes, almost certainly destined for political service. Two twins talking rapidly beside a tall man in Pathfinder exploration armor. Future explorers. Future void walkers. Future heroes. Most students arrived at UE Academy already knowing their future. Artemis did not. Because Artemis Golmir did not arrive with parents. And he did not arrive with expectations. He arrived alone. 8 years earlier he had stood in another corridor much like this one, except that one had been filled with flashing red emergency lights and the smell of burned metal. A maintenance tunnel accident, they had said. A pressure surge. An explosion. His parents had been working the tunnel when the blast occurred. The Ark's official report had been simple. Fatalities, 2. Engineering Corp technicians. Case closed. Artemis had been 8 years old. 8 years old and suddenly without a home. The Ark had policies for that. It always did. Orphaned Terran minors were transferred to unevaluated housing, large communal residence complexes where Peace Corps caretakers raised children until they were old enough to enter academy evaluation. That was where Artemis had grown up. The Peace Corps were the Ark's healers and caretakers, doctors, counselors, teachers, protectors of civilian well-being. They run hospitals and orphan housing. They made sure the Ark's population stayed healthy, both physically and mentally. The caretakers had done their best with Artemis. They fed him, educated him, patched his scraped knees when he came back from places he wasn't supposed to be, and frequently dragged him out of areas he definitely should not have been. Because Artemis Golmir had a problem. A serious one. He could not stop tinkering. It had started small. Curiosity. The way a terminal screen flickered when someone typed commands. The hidden panels beneath corridor access plates. The soft clicking sounds security locks made when they cycled. Most kids ignored those things. Artemis couldn't. He wanted to know how everything worked. And once he understood how something worked, he wanted to see if he could make it do something else. At first it had been harmless. Taking apart a broken datapad. Opening a maintenance panel in the housing dorms. By age 10 he was sneaking into computer labs after lights out. By 11 he had figured out how to bypass basic terminal authentication protocols. At 12 he had accidentally overridden the dormitory environmental controls. The housing complex spent 6 hours cycling between tropical humidity and polar cold before the system rebooted. The caretakers were not amused. At 13 he discovered Ark maintenance shafts. That discovery had changed everything. Maintenance tunnels ran through the entire Ark like veins through a living body. They connected cargo bays, life support systems, power conduits, reactor stabilizers, gravity generators, every piece of machinery that kept Ark 34 alive. Most of them were locked. Most of them had security sensors. Most people assumed that meant they couldn't be accessed. Artemis learned otherwise. Terminals controlling maintenance doors were older systems, legacy architecture from the Ark's original construction centuries earlier. And old systems had weaknesses. Weaknesses Artemis loved to find. Many nights he slipped out of unevaluated housing after curfew, climbing into crawl spaces and ducts, moving quietly through the Ark's hidden infrastructure. He learned its layout, its shortcuts, its forgotten spaces. Sometimes he would just sit inside a tunnel listening to the distant roar of the Ark's engines through the metal. Sometimes he watched maintenance drones glide silently past in automated patrol patterns. Sometimes he found rooms no one had entered in decades. The Ark was enormous. Cities built inside a machine. And Artemis had discovered the back doors to all of it. Which was why most of the Peace Corps caretakers knew his name. One in particular stood out. Caretaker Marin. Tall. Sharp-eyed. Impossible to sneak past. She had caught Artemis sneaking out at least 15 times. The first few times she had scolded him. The next few she had grounded him. After that she mostly just sighed. Artemis, she had said one night while escorting him back to the dorms after catching him halfway inside an environmental conduit. "You are going to get yourself killed one day." "I wasn't going anywhere dangerous," he replied. "You were climbing inside an oxygen recycling unit." "I was just looking. That system vents atmospheric scrub gases." "I did not know that." She had stared at him for a long moment. "You need to stop hacking Ark systems." "I wasn't hacking." "You bypassed 3 security protocols." "That sounds like hacking." Artemis had shrugged. It was a really old system. Marin pinched the bridge of her nose. "You are going to give me early retirement." But there had always been something else in her voice too. Not just frustration. Concern. Because Artemis had never hacked anything for money. Or sabotage. Or rebellion. He did it because he needed to understand. Machines made sense. Systems had logic. People were harder. Which was exactly why Artemis Golmir stood alone outside the UE Academy evaluation hall while most of the other students clustered together in excited groups. He leaned against the wall, watching the others quietly. He was good at watching. It helped him understand things. The evaluation doors slid open with a soft mechanical hiss. A tall instructor stepped out wearing the deep blue uniform of the academy faculty. Her voice carried down the corridor. First-year unevaluated students, please assemble. Students began moving toward the doorway. Conversations faded. Excitement shifted into nervous anticipation. Artemis pushed himself away from the wall. For a moment he looked up at the glowing letters above the doorway. UE Academy. This was the first step. The beginning of whatever future Arc 34 had planned for him. Engineer. Explorer. Soldier. Or something else entirely. He took a slow breath. Then Artemis Golmir stepped through the doorway into the academy. And into the unknown future waiting for him. This is the end of Chapter 1. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more.